I was there holding a piece of white stone stained with dirt when the first lightning bolt split the dark sky above the town hall. At that moment, hundreds of people around me stopped shouting, stopped protesting, and fell into absolute silence, because that stone was glowing. It wasn't a reflection of the storm. It wasn't a trick of the light. It was as if an invisible energy pulsed through that fragment of the destroyed statue of the Virgin Mary. And when I raised the reliquary, I felt that it was no longer I who controlled my movements. It was as if something larger, something I couldn't explain, had taken over me. But for you to understand how I got to that moment that forever changed my life and the life of an entire community, I need to go back to the beginning. My name is Mark. I'm 26 years old, and until a few months ago, I was just a young artist trying to find my place in the world. I lived in a small town in the countryside, the kind where everyone knows everyone, where news travels slowly and traditions are passed down from generation to generation like sacred treasures. I've always been the introverted type, you know. I spent hours painting, drawing, creating murals on the abandoned walls of the town. Art was my way of talking to the world when words failed me, and there was a special place I always went whenever I needed inspiration or when depression hit too hard. A small shrine dedicated to the Virgin Mary, built decades ago right in the heart of our community. That place, how can I describe it? It was simple, humble, but it had an energy I could never explain. It was nestled between two green-covered hills, with a crystal-clear stream running alongside it. The shrine itself wasn't much: white brick walls, a small chapel with wooden benches carved by local artisans, and hand-painted tiles that told stories of our people's faith. In the center, there was a beautiful image of the Virgin, always surrounded by fresh flowers that people renewed every day. I went there almost every week, not because I was particularly religious at the time, but because there was something magical about that place. It was where I painted my best murals, where I found peace when my mind was troubled, where I felt I could be myself without judgment. Sometimes I would spend hours observing other people who frequented the shrine. Mrs. Carmel, an 80-year-old woman who knew every stone in that place. Anna Clara, a nurse who always stopped to pray before going to work at the hospital. And Father Joseph, a young man who had recently arrived at our parish, carrying in his eyes a sadness that I recognized well. It was Mrs. Carmel who first told me the stories about the shrine. She told me about miracles that had supposedly happened there, about people who arrived hopeless and left with renewed hope. I listened respectfully, but I confess I didn't believe much in those things. For me, the shrine was important for what it represented culturally, for the art it housed, for the peace it offered. I never imagined that one day I myself would experience something that would completely challenge my worldview. The change began when a new mayor took office in our town. From day one, he made it clear that he had a very different vision of what progress should be. For him, traditions were backward, and places like the shrine were anchors for the mentally ill. I remember perfectly the first time I heard those words coming out of his mouth at a public meeting. I felt my blood boil. He began a systematic campaign against the shrine. He said that the place attracted troubled people and that it harmed the economic development of the region. He used cold technical rhetoric, as if he were talking about numbers on a spreadsheet and not a sacred space for hundreds of families. To him, mental illness was something contagious that could spread through excessive mysticism. At first, most of us thought it was just politicians' talk, that he talked a big game but wouldn't do anything concrete. How wrong we were. It was one June morning that everything literally came crashing down. I was at home, sleeping, when I heard the rumble of machinery. At first, I thought it was construction work on some street, but the sound was coming from the direction of the shrine. I threw on the first clothes I found and ran out. When I got there, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 3 giant excavators were demolishing everything: the walls that housed my murals, the benches where so many people had found comfort, the hand-painted tiles by our ancestors. Everything turning into rubble. In the midst of the destruction, I saw the image of the Virgin being thrown down with a brutality that made me cry. Right there in front of everyone, I cried like a child. I wasn't alone. Several people from the community had woken up to the noise and rushed to the scene. Anna Clara was kneeling on the ground, gathering shards of the broken tiles. Mrs. Carmel leaned on a cane, murmuring prayers with tears streaming down her wrinkled face. Father Joseph was trying to negotiate with the workers, but they had orders not to stop for anything. It was at this moment that I noticed a strange detail. One of the workers was trying to completely break the statue of the Virgin, but his sledgehammer couldn't destroy a specific piece at the base of the image. It was as if that fragment was made of a material stronger than the rest. He hit, and the stone simply wouldn't break. Other workers came to help, but the result was the same. That caught my attention, but in the confusion of the moment, I ended up forgetting it. When the sun rose, the sanctuary was completely demolished. Only mountains of rubble remained, crushed flower petals, mixed with the earth, and a heavy silence that seemed to carry all the pain of our community. I stood there, contemplating the destruction, feeling that a part of me had also been demolished along with those walls. In the days that followed, the revolt grew. It wasn't just anger at what had happened, but a deep indignation at how it was done, secretly, without warning, as if we were enemies to be defeated, and not citizens with rights. The town administration tried to justify the action by saying the land would be used to build a convention center that would bring economic development to the region. It was Anna Clara who had the idea of organizing a peaceful resistance. She proposed that we gather in the town square every day to pressure the mayor to reconsider his decision. At first, there were only 20 or 30 of us, but the numbers grew as the news spread. Teachers, doctors, farm workers, artists, housewives, young people and the elderly. Our resistance front became a true mosaic of the community. I started painting an impromptu mural on the wall of the town hall, telling the story of the sanctuary through images. Each brushstroke was an act of resistance, each chosen color a way to keep alive the memory of what we had lost. People came to paste messages, old photographs of the sanctuary, flower petals. That wall transformed into a spontaneous memorial that touched the heart of anyone who passed by. It was during one of these demonstrations that I got to know Father Joseph better. He approached me while I was painting, and we started talking. I discovered that he carried a very deep personal trauma. He had lost his old parish in a fire years before, and this had left him afraid to get too involved in the fight for reconstruction. But at the same time, he saw in what was happening to us a chance to overcome his own demons. And if you're enjoying this story of resistance, faith, and overcoming adversity, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow other stories like this that can touch and transform your lives too. The turning point came when Father Joseph made an extraordinary discovery in the archives of the old church. He found original blueprints of the sanctuary, historical documents that revealed surprising details about its construction. The most impressive was the existence of a secret tunnel connecting the sanctuary site to the nearby river. According to the notes, this passage had been built by monks as an escape route for those persecuted for political and religious reasons. When Miss Carmel learned of this discovery, her eyes shone in a way I had never seen before. She called me aside and revealed secrets she had kept for decades. She told me that the image of the Virgin Mary wasn't just an ordinary sculpture. Under the white paint, there were ancestral inscriptions, symbols of protection that blended Christian traditions with indigenous knowledge of the region's first inhabitants. Even more impressive, she told me that she had managed to rescue that fragment of the statue that the workers hadn't completely destroyed. During the confusion of the demolition, when everyone was focused on the destruction, she approached the rubble and grabbed that piece of stone that seemed indestructible. She kept it at home like a treasure, sensing that it would be important later. When she showed me the fragment, I felt a shiver run down my spine. It was a small piece, about the size of a closed fist, but there was something about it that emanated a special energy. Mrs. Carmel explained that according to the ancient traditions she had learned from her grandmother, it was a true reliquary, imbued with decades of faith and prayer. At that moment, our struggle took on a dimension that went beyond the political. We weren't just trying to rebuild a building, but to preserve something sacred, something that connected our community to its deepest roots. The reliquary became the symbol of our resistance, tangible proof that some things cannot be destroyed by machines or government decrees. The tension in the town grew each day. The mayor used the local media to defame our cause, calling us fanatics and saying we were promoting mass hysteria. Some merchants, fearing reprisals, began to distance themselves from the movement, but most of the population remained firm, understanding that this fight was about much more than a sanctuary. It was about the right to preserve our identity, our history, our collective soul. It was Father Joseph who suggested that we organize a large demonstration at the town hall, carrying the reliquary as a symbol of our faith and determination. The idea was to hold a peaceful vigil, showing that our resistance came from a place of love, not hate. Anna Clara coordinated the logistics. I was responsible for publicity through posters and murals, and Mrs. Carmel would be responsible for carrying the reliquary. The date chosen was a Friday at the end of September. Throughout the previous week, I felt a growing anxiety mixed with an inexplicable expectation. It was as if something big was about to happen, something that would change the course of this whole story. I spent sleepless nights painting, praying in my own way, trying to prepare myself for what was to come. On the afternoon of the demonstration, the sky began to darken with heavy clouds. The atmosphere was charged, electric, as if nature itself was preparing for something special. Hundreds of people gathered in the town square, entire families, young people with signs, elderly people leaning on canes, children running between the legs of adults. It was beautiful and moving to see our community united in that way. When we began to walk towards the town hall, I felt that I wasn't just participating in a political demonstration. It was as if we were in a procession, carrying not only our demands, but all the faith and hope accumulated for generations. Mrs. Carmel walked in front, holding the reliquary against her chest, and I walked beside her, ready to support her if she needed it. We arrived at the town hall, just as the first raindrops began to fall. The building was surrounded by municipal guards, and I could see the mayor watching from a second-story window, a sneer on his face. Our crowd positioned itself in front of the building, forming a peaceful but determined semicircle. That's when Mrs. Carmel called me and said she felt she should pass the reliquary to me. Her exact words were, "Mark, my son, you are young, strong, and have faith. It's your time to carry this burden." At first, I hesitated. I didn't feel worthy of such responsibility, but she insisted, placing that sacred fragment in my hands. The moment I touched the reliquary was indescribable. I felt an electric current run through my entire body, an energy that seemed to connect me with all the people who had prayed in that sanctuary over the years. It was as if their voices, their hopes, their dreams were all concentrated in that small piece of stone. The rain intensified, turning into a storm. Lightning bolts cut across the dark sky, momentarily illuminating the dramatic scene we were living. The municipal guards advanced, trying to disperse our demonstration, but we remained firm, sheltering ourselves from the rain as best we could, but without retreating an inch. It was at this critical moment that the inexplicable happened. I raised the reliquary high, in an instinctive gesture of defiance and faith, and at that precise moment, a gigantic lightning bolt illuminated the sky. But it wasn't just the light that caught everyone's attention. The reliquary began to glow with its own light, soft but unmistakable, visible even in the storm. The silence that followed was absolute. Hundreds of people stopped shouting, moving, even breathing. Even the municipal guards lowered their batons, watching in astonishment at what was happening. I myself couldn't believe what I was seeing and feeling. That object in my hands pulsed with an energy that transcended any rational explanation. But the most impressive was yet to come. As I held the reliquary aloft, more lightning bolts began to fall, but they all illuminated specifically the area where the ruins of the old sanctuary lay. It was as if an invisible force was drawing a luminous map in the sky, connecting the reliquary to the sacred place we had lost. At that moment, I felt that it was no longer I who controlled the situation. My legs began to move on their own, guiding me towards the demolition machines that were still parked near the rubble. The crowd followed me in reverent silence, as if we all instinctively knew that something greater was happening. When I got close to the equipment, the reliquary shone even brighter. Suddenly, the machines began to exhibit inexplicable malfunctions, engines locking up, electrical systems failing, as if an invisible energy was neutralizing them. The operators tried to restart them, but it was useless. It was as if the reliquary itself was creating a field of protection around the ruins of the sanctuary. By this time, even the mayor had come down from the building, approaching with an expression of disbelief on his face. I could see in his eyes that something had changed. The arrogance and disdain were replaced by genuine confusion in the face of what he was witnessing. He approached me, looked at the reliquary that still glowed in my hands, and for the first time since taking office, seemed speechless. It was Father Joseph who broke the silence. He approached the two of us, and in a calm but firm voice, said, "Mayor, I don't know how you interpret what's happening here, but I believe we can all agree that we've witnessed something extraordinary. Perhaps it's time to reconsider our positions, and find a solution that honors both progress and tradition." What followed was a tense but respectful negotiation. The presence of so many people, the inexplicable phenomenon we had all witnessed, and the repercussions the story was gaining on social media created irresistible pressure on the municipal administration. Within hours, regional press representatives arrived in the town, drawn by the reports circulating about miracles and mysterious lights. Throughout the negotiation, I kept the reliquary with me. It had stopped glowing, but it still pulsed with a gentle energy that gave me strength and clarity of mind. It was as if that object connected me to an ancestral wisdom, helping me find the right words to defend our cause without resorting to aggressive confrontation. The final agreement went beyond what we thought possible. The mayor not only agreed to reconsider the demolition, but committed to allocating public funds for the reconstruction of the sanctuary in another part of town, maintaining a memorial area at the original site. More than that, he publicly acknowledged that he had underestimated the cultural and spiritual value of that space for our community. In the months that followed, I closely followed the entire reconstruction process. The new sanctuary was built on a nearby hill, with a privileged view of the entire city. We kept all the original elements that could be salvaged from the rubble, incorporating them into the new structure. My murals were recreated, but now they also included the story of our resistance, transforming art into living memory. The reliquary gained a place of honor on the new altar, protected by a small glass reliquary that allows everyone to see it. To this day, many people report special sensations when they approach it, an inexplicable peace, a feeling of spiritual connection. Some even talk of small miracles in their lives. As for me, that experience completely changed my relationship with faith and the mystery of life. I didn't become religious in the traditional sense, but I developed an openness to dimensions of existence that I had previously considered pure superstition. I learned that there are forces in the universe that our reason cannot explain, but that our heart can recognize and respect. The most important thing was discovering my own strength. Throughout that struggle, I realized I possessed an inner capacity for leadership and courage I never knew existed. Art remained my primary language, but it also became a tool for social transformation, a way to unite people around just causes. Anna Clara became a great friend and partner in several community projects that emerged after our victory. Father Joseph overcame his traumas and became a respected leader, not only religiously, but also socially. Carmel, even at 80 years old, gained renewed energy and became a sort of official guardian of the sanctuary's history, welcoming visitors and sharing our story with anyone who would listen. Most surprising was the transformation of the mayor himself. After that incident, he adopted a much more dialogic and respectful approach to the community. We never openly discussed what he felt that stormy night, but his subsequent actions showed that something fundamental had shifted in his worldview. 5 years later, the new sanctuary has become a pilgrimage site, attracting visitors from various regions. We created an annual festival blending popular culture, music, and art, celebrating not only our faith, but our ability to resist and rebuild. It's beautiful to see how something that began with pain and revolt has transformed into a source of joy and inspiration for so many. Whenever I look at the reliquary on the altar, I remember that stormy night and the feeling of being used by a force greater than my own will. I can't scientifically explain what happened, and perhaps it's not necessary. The important thing is that experience taught me that when we fight for what is just and true, the universe conspires in our favor in ways our minds cannot anticipate. I also learned that miracles aren't just extraordinary supernatural events, but often the courage of ordinary people uniting for a cause larger than themselves. The real miracle was seeing our community transform, discovering strengths we didn't know we had, building bridges where there was once only division. If there's a message I'd like to leave for those listening to this story, it's this: never underestimate the power of unity when it stems from a genuine purpose. No matter how impossible the situation seems, no matter how powerful the adversary, when people of goodwill unite to defend what they believe in, extraordinary things can happen. And sometimes, just sometimes, the universe surprises us with signs confirming we're on the right path. It could be a reliquary shining in a storm, a machine malfunctioning at the exact moment, an energy giving us strength when we thought we had none left. The important thing is to be open to recognizing these signs and to have the courage to act when they appear. Today, when I walk the streets of my town and see the new sanctuary shining on the hill, I feel immense gratitude for having lived through all of this, not just for the victory we achieved, but for the personal growth that struggle afforded me. I discovered I'm capable of so much more than I imagined, and that has forever changed how I face life's challenges. So if you're going through a difficult situation, if you feel you're fighting against forces greater than yourselves, remember this story. Remember that sometimes the solution comes from where we least expect it, that strength can emerge when we think we have none left, and that small acts of faith and courage can trigger extraordinary transformations. The reliquary remains there, on the altar of the new sanctuary, reminding us all that there are mysteries in life worth protecting and defending. And I continue to paint, create, dream, always with the certainty that experience showed me something about the deep nature of reality. We are all connected by invisible threads of hope, and when we pull those threads with love and determination, miracles can happen.